Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us. So we're here today according to this hearing's title, Revisiting the Implications of the FACE Act, Part 2. Part 1 occurred in May 2023 under the chairmanship of now Speaker Johnson. And during the intervening year and a half, things really haven't changed that much. We continue to see heightened political violence concerning reproductive rights, particularly by right-wing extremists. We continue to see the House GOP's efforts to claim disproportionate enforcement under the FACE Act, all while ignoring the disproportionately greater number of attacks against reproductive health care facilities that provide abortion care. And we continue to see our GOP colleagues ignoring facts and pushing a false narrative of selective enforcement in order to form a pretext for repeal of the FACE Act. What's become clear in the intervening months is that this attack upon the FACE Act is part of a coordinated, extreme, anti-choice agenda that seeks to gut reproductive rights and effectively ban abortion care in the United States. That agenda is outlined in the extremist conservative manifesto called Project 2025, which was rolled out just weeks before Part 1 of this hearing. Unless our Republican colleagues once again deny any connection between Project 2025 and their actions, we should note that both parts of this hearing have parroted the false narrative of Project 2025, claiming selective enforcement against anti-abortion advocates on page, I believe it's 568 of Project 2025. And each of today's majority witnesses have close ties to Project 2025. Ms. Hawley is an anti-abortion lawyer and senior counsel at the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF, which is a Project 2025 advisory board member. Mr. Vaughn's arrest under the FACE Act for blockading a reproductive health care facility for which he was convicted by a jury is cited, it was on page 558 of Project 2025. I do have to correct the chair's statement that Mr. Vaughn was arrested for praying at that facility. In fact, the record is quite clear. His arrest was for blockading the facility, not praying. And Mr. Crampton, of course, was Mr. Vaughn's attorney in that case. So they all have close ties to this manifesto. So in revisiting the FACE Act today, our Republican colleagues are really just giving themselves another opportunity to signal their support to the extremists plotting to criminalize or block access to abortion across the country. And the only thing that's changed since the first iteration of this hearing is public awareness of the deeply unpopular plans outlined in Project 2025. Over the past year and a half, House Republicans have attempted to cloak their unpopular agenda with misleading claims that their policies will support women, children, and civil rights. But those claims have repeatedly turned up empty, because the truth is every step they take towards a nationwide abortion ban drastically undermines the health and well-being of American women and children. And furthermore, it violates women's rights to make their own personal medical decisions without politicians invading their doctors' offices and their private business. The Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, or FACE Act, protects facilities providing access to abortion and other reproductive health services, as well as places of religious worship, protects them from the use of force, threats, intimidation, or physical obstruction. The record from the subcommittee's hearing on this topic in May of last year is clear. There's no credible evidence to support Republican allegations that the FACE Act is being selectively enforced. Even so, if our colleagues were actually concerned about that, you'd assume they'd be calling for stronger and broader enforcement of the FACE Act. Instead, our subcommittee chair and 47 other House Republicans have introduced legislation to repeal the FACE Act. Actions speak louder than words, and with that action, the motivation here is very clear. In repealing the FACE Act, they would invite every anti-abortion extremist to use violence, threats, intimidation to block access to abortion services everywhere, even in states where it's legal. A nationwide ban in practice, if not in law. Congress passed the FACE Act in 1994 in response to 2 decades of escalating violence, intimidation, and blockades against abortion providers and their patients. The need for this protection was extremely clear as the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee detailed numerous incidents in their respective committee reports of abortion providers being subjected to horrifying threats, including murder. Dr. David Gunn was murdered by an anti-abortion extremist outside a clinic in Pensacola, Florida in March 1993. The House report on the FACE Act noted that Dr. Gunn's murder was the tragic culmination of years of threats, blockades, and personal attacks. In addition to threats against providers, both committees detailed incidents where abortion clinics were the targets of arson, bombings, chemical attacks, and blockades by anti-abortion extremists that resulted in sometimes severe injuries for doctors, clinic workers, volunteers, patients, and others. Today, the FACE Act remains an important deterrent to political violence regarding reproductive health care. Since January 2021, the Department of Justice has brought 25 FACE Act cases involving 57 defendants. And yes, those cases have involved both abortion providers and anti-abortion facilities. And of course, we must condemn all political violence and threats of violence, whatever the beliefs or motivations of those who engage in it, and regardless of who the target may be. But it remains that abortion providers and their patients are actually the ones who face higher levels of violence. And to the extent there's a disparity in FACE Act prosecution, that disparity is a reflection of the facts. A 2022 report from the National Abortion Federation, which we introduced into the record in part 1 of this hearing, confirmed that anti-abortion violence is escalating in the wake of the Dobbs decision. That report detailed that there was a 100% increase in arsons and a 20% increase in threats of death and harm against clinics and providers as compared to 2021. There was also a 229% increase in stalking from 2021 to 22, indicating an increase of reports of providers and patients being followed as they entered, exited, traveled to, or traveled from clinics. Moreover, that report noted that after the Supreme Court issued its decision in Dobbs, clinics in states where abortion remains legal saw a disproportionate increase in violence and disruption. This escalating violence is part of an anti-abortion extremist campaign to achieve by extra-legal means what they've been politically unable to do since Dobbs, which is to enact a nationwide abortion ban. This decades-long effort, which the FACE Act has helped to de-escalate, involves intimidating doctors and providers from delivering necessary and often life-saving reproductive care, and denying access to healthcare facilities where women can exercise the freedom to make decisions impacting their own health and their family's well-being. Because as a leader of the anti-abortion group Operation Rescue said when asked during the FACE Act passage, if there's no one willing to conduct abortions, there are no abortions. Republican lawmakers are now trying to turn the FACE Act into yet another rallying cry in their culture war against abortion, blatantly politicizing a law that's about protecting Americans and keeping them safe. And in doing so, they knowingly enable dangerous and hostile rhetoric that threatens women's access to reproductive health care all across this country. And ultimately, that makes them complicit in the consequences of those actions. No one deserves to be denied medical care because of someone else's political or religious beliefs. Everyone deserves the freedom to provide or seek appropriate medical care without threats to their own safety. And all women deserve the freedom to work with their doctors to decide on and access the health care that's right for them. That's the America that I and my Democratic colleagues are fighting for, because that's the America our constituents deserve. I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. I would note that at least one thing that has changed since 2023, as the ranking member referenced saying nothing had changed, is we sent a letter to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice responded in the letter and asked that we consent that we insert that in the record. And without objection, we'll put it in the record. That confirms the numbers that I cited in the opening statement, that there have been 24 FACE Act cases against 55 defendants, obtaining 34 convictions, and of which only 2 were directed, as they say here, towards non-pro-life, directed towards something that isn't attacking pro-lifers. With that, I would ask the chairman if he would like to offer an opening statement.
I think the chairman, only 2. And what we forgot, what the ranking member didn't mention, is in the aftermath of the Dobbs leak and the Dobbs decision that spring and summer, 103 churches and crisis pregnancy centers were attacked. She used the term extremists for the pro-life people. Look, we're against all violence. I agree with that statement. But that was not in any way an accurate picture of what took place in that summer, and frankly, the disparity in who's prosecuted under the FACE Act.